My name is Julia Monroe. When Amanda, the woman my brother swore he'd marry, told me at dinner, "Don't come to the wedding. I'll kick you out anyway," I stayed silent. But weeks later, as guests gathered for what should have been their ceremony, I walked into that chapel, handed the officiant a folded letter, and watched Amanda read my words aloud before fleeing in tears. That was the moment I took my dignity back. Before we get into the full story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to confront someone who tried to erase you from your own family, this one's for you. It was the kind of Texas summer that hums with heat. Cicadas, sticky lemonade, the slamming of screen doors, everything golden and slow and sharp around the edges. I was 9, barefoot in our family's living room, staring at the shattered pieces of my mother's favorite lamp like they were shards of my own heart. "I didn't do it," I whispered. But no one was listening. "Julia Ann Monroe, how many times have I told you not to roughhouse indoors?" Mom's voice was sharp, her face flushed with frustration as she loomed over me. Dad said nothing, just shook his head with that same disappointed sigh I'd already learned to dread. Across the room, the culprits, my twin cousins Mason and Drew, stifled giggles, hiding behind the couch like they hadn't been the ones sword-fighting with plastic lightsabers just minutes earlier. I opened my mouth to speak again, but before I could, the betrayal struck first, Dad's voice. "Your cousins didn't touch it. You were right there, Julia. Own up to your mistake." But I didn't, my voice cracked, more from confusion than volume. I wanted to yell, scream, beg them to believe me, but a deep shame, heavier than my small chest could carry, kept my voice small. And then the door burst open. "Leave her alone, she didn't do it." It was Ethan, my older brother by 3 years, charging in from the backyard with dirt on his jeans and certainty in his voice. His hands were balled into fists, his jaw tight. "She didn't even touch the lamp, I saw it." Mason swung the saber, he knocked it off. The room froze. Dad blinked. Mom turned to my cousins, who were now wide-eyed and silent. "Is that true?" she asked them. They shrugged, feigning innocence, suddenly mute. But the moment had passed. The heat of their blame had already branded itself into me. "She still should have told them to stop," Dad muttered, as if halfway backing down but needing to be right. Mom just waved her hand. "Clean it up, Julia." I remember kneeling to gather the jagged pieces, my fingers trembling, and Ethan beside me, helping without a word. His presence was the only softness I had in that moment. Later, as the house calmed and the cicadas returned to their chorus, Ethan passed me a cold Dr. Pepper on the back steps. "Don't worry, Jules, I saw you, that's what matters." I nodded, but deep down a tiny voice whispered, "But they didn't." That day became a quiet scar, one of those memories that doesn't bleed but simmers. And I didn't know it then, but that exact ache would return. Years later, bigger, louder, unavoidable. Except this time it wouldn't be about a lamp, it would be about me. The dining room had changed, but I hadn't. New hardwood floors. A sleek chandelier instead of the gaudy brass one from the 90s. Modern art prints where Mom's cross-stitched Bible verses used to hang. The room looked like it had graduated, grown up. I wasn't so sure I had. I stood by the table, straightening the napkins even though they were already perfectly aligned. My fingers trembled with the kind of anticipation that didn't feel good. The kind you get before a doctor calls your name or before a family dinner where you're not sure which version of your parents will show up. I heard the front door open. Ethan's voice rang through the hall. "Jules, we're here." And then I heard her laugh. Light, musical, slightly forced. Amanda. She entered first, wearing a powder blue sundress that screamed effortless charm, her long honey blonde hair curled to Pinterest perfection. She looked exactly like the kind of woman who'd grace a bridal magazine. Or your worst passive-aggressive nightmare. "Julia," she said, her lips lifting into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi, wow, the house looks nostalgic, not lovely, not warm, just a polite way to say dated." "Hi, Amanda," I said, offering my hand. She leaned in for a cheek kiss instead. I flinched. Ethan followed behind, carrying a bottle of wine and grinning like he had no idea what tension meant. "She brought rosé, that's your favorite, right?" "Not really. I preferred Merlot." But I nodded anyway. The 4 of us, Mom, Dad, Ethan, Amanda, sat down around the newly refinished oak table, passing dishes and memories with equal caution. I'd made the salad. Mom had done the roast. Amanda had brought a beet tart that no one touched except Dad, who said, "Interesting flavor." Amanda laughed and sipped her wine. "So, Julia," she said suddenly, dabbing her lips with her napkin, "Ethan tells me you're a project manager at that. What was it? Oil and gas firm. Yes, Downline Solutions, I replied. We focus mostly on infrastructure oversight. I manage field projects, and she cut in before I could finish. Wow, sounds very practical, I blinked. It is, there's a lot of travel, coordination, I enjoy it. Ethan jumped in, trying to smooth it over. She's being modest. Jules handles million-dollar contracts like they're IKEA furniture. Amanda smiled sweetly. Well, I'm sure you're great at keeping things in line. Was it a compliment? It felt like a jab. Thanks, I said, deciding not to take the bait. And you're still in marketing, she nodded. Oh yes, but I left my agency to freelance. More freedom and less management, Mom beamed. She's working with a wedding brand now, just darling. Amanda tilted her glass toward me. We actually have a shoot in Sedona next month. Maybe you've heard of Bridal Wildflower. I'm the lead concept designer. I hadn't, but I smiled anyway. The conversation swirled around wedding venues, floral installations, and Ethan's new job assignment in the Sahara, which he clearly hadn't told Amanda about yet. She blinked too hard when he mentioned it. Oh, she said lightly, that assignment's still happening. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, just 3 weeks, I told you, right, of course. She looked at me and smiled thinly. That's how it is with these hardworking types, isn't it? Always a trip to plan. A deal to close. Something to control. My fork paused midway to my mouth. Control. There it was again, wrapped in a smile and sealed with passive judgment. I glanced around the table. Mom was refilling Amanda's wine. Dad was pretending not to notice anything. Ethan was launching into a story about how we once got locked in the attic playing flashlight tag as kids. Everyone was playing pretend. Except me. Amanda kept glancing at me during the story, like I was a ghost who'd overstayed her welcome. I kept catching it, that flicker of calculation behind her lashes, like she was already mapping out her place in the family and trying to figure out where to put me. Spoiler, she wanted me out of frame. So, I asked casually, turning to her while she reached for the bread, are you and Ethan moving in with us before the wedding or finding a place of your own? Ethan looked up. Oh, we're thinking of staying here for a bit after I leave, just until Amanda finds a place she likes. Amanda smiled at him. Then looked at me. Just a few weeks, I wouldn't dream of overstaying. Of course not, I said, chewing slowly. Just enough to make yourself at home. Her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second before the charm returned. Exactly. We chewed in silence. The beet tart sat untouched in the center of the table like a metaphor no one wanted to address. Later, as we cleared the dishes, Amanda and I moved in quiet parallel. She handed me plates, always just slightly off-center. I rinsed them without comment. At one point, our hands touched over the soap bottle. She didn't flinch, she just smiled again. Thank you for dinner, she said, voice soft and layered. I didn't say you're welcome, I just nodded. The storm hadn't come yet, but I could feel the barometric pressure in the room. Something was building, and I knew this was going to end badly. The dishes were done. The tension had been scrubbed into the silverware and rinsed down the drain. Inside, Amanda was chatting with Mom about centerpiece options like nothing had happened. Like nothing was happening. I was wiping my hands on a dish towel when Ethan caught my eye and tipped his head toward the back porch. Got a minute? I followed him outside. The night air was humid but soft, still holding the echo of cicadas from the dusk. The porch light cast a low golden glow across the railing. We hadn't been out here together in a long time. I leaned against the wooden beam, arms crossed loosely. So. What's up? Ethan exhaled, pulling his phone from his pocket and fiddling with it like it held the words he couldn't quite say. You remember when we were kids and used to make up stupid games out here? He asked. Like pretending the porch was a pirate ship, I smirked. You made me be the sea monster half the time. He grinned. Yeah, you were weirdly good at it. Silence settled for a beat. Then he looked at me, his expression shifting. I need to ask you something. There it was. Okay, I said cautiously. It's about the wedding. I waited. We found a venue, he continued. It's perfect. Rustic with this big cedar barn and the back opens up to a wildflower field. Amanda cried when she saw it. That sounds really nice. It is, he said, but the deposit's due in a week and her family's a little stretched right now. Her dad's been out of work since the spring, and well, we didn't want to ask them to pull money they don't have. And I prompted, though I already felt the direction of this wind. Ethan looked me in the eye. I was wondering if you could help cover it, just the deposit. I'd pay you back after the honeymoon, I swear. The world went quiet for a moment. The hum of the porch light, the buzz of one persistent mosquito, that was all. I opened my mouth, closed it again. How much is it? 8,000, he said quickly. I know it's a lot, I know, and I hate asking, but you're the only one I trust with this. That last line, it landed hard. I studied my brother's face, earnest, a little anxious, hopeful, and suddenly I saw the boy who'd once stood between me and our parents, who'd raised his voice when I couldn't. Ethan, I started, my voice quiet. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, he added. And I know you've done well, Mom's always saying how proud she is of you, even if she doesn't say it to your face. I raised an eyebrow. When does she say that? He grinned sheepishly. Okay, maybe she doesn't use the word proud, but she brags about you to her friends. I let out a soft breath, heart thudding. It wasn't the money, I had it. I wasn't rich, but I'd worked my way into a comfortable salary. I had savings. 8,000 wouldn't sink me, but it wasn't just money. It was what it meant. What it would mean if things went wrong. If Amanda's soft smiles grew sharper. If this marriage, this family, shifted in ways I couldn't control. Still, I heard myself say it anyway. Of course I'll help. Ethan's face lit up. Seriously, I nodded, forcing a smile. Just let me know when and where to send it. He pulled me into a sudden hug. Tight, familiar. You're the best, he murmured. You really are. I patted his back lightly. Don't tell Mom, she'll expect a yacht next. He laughed, and we stayed like that for a few more seconds. Siblings again, like we were on that porch at 9 and 12, guarding our imaginary ship from invisible sea monsters. When I stepped back inside, Amanda looked up from the couch. Her expression didn't change much. Just a slight lift of her brows, like she already knew what Ethan had asked. And maybe she did. I went upstairs early that night, claiming a headache, but it wasn't pain behind my eyes, it was pressure. A growing weight I couldn't quite explain. I told myself it was just wedding stress. Temporary, a one-time favor. But somewhere inside I felt the tiniest flicker of unease. The kind that starts small and grows roots when you're not looking. It started with suitcases. Ethan left on a Tuesday morning, all hugs and reassurances, promising to call whenever the satellite signal allowed. By Wednesday afternoon, Amanda's things filled the hallway like she'd always belonged there. I'll just be here a couple weeks, she said brightly, dragging a rolling bag across the hardwood. I'll try not to be any trouble, I smiled. We'll figure it out. We did, poorly. The first skirmish was laundry. You separated colors from whites, she asked one afternoon, staring into the washer like I'd offended it personally. Yes, I said, always have. Huh, she replied. I usually just throw everything together, saves time. That's an option, I said carefully. By Friday, my throw pillows were gone, replaced by beige ones she'd ordered to make the living room feel calmer. They clash less, she explained. With what? I asked. With energy, she said, like that settled it. Meals became a minefield. You eat dinner that late? She asked one night, glancing at the clock. Ethan likes to eat by 6. I work until 7, I replied. That's usually how jobs work, she smiled. You should try setting boundaries with work. I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. But the breaking point came on a quiet Saturday morning. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard the jingle of keys. Not mine. I looked up to see Amanda in the doorway, purse over her shoulder. I'm taking your car, she said casually. Mine's low on gas, I stared. You didn't ask, she paused. Well, Ethan said you wouldn't mind. Ethan wasn't there. I do mind, I said, standing. I need it today, she frowned. For what? For my life, I said evenly. Her lips pressed together. You're being difficult. I took a breath, slow, steady. This isn't your house to command. The words landed between us, solid and final. Her eyes widened. Excuse me. You heard me, I said. You're a guest here. You don't take my things without asking. Silence stretched. Then she scoffed, tossing the keys onto the counter. Fine, I'll get an Uber. I didn't realize generosity came with conditions. It comes with respect, I replied. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the frame. My hands shook. But underneath the adrenaline, something else stirred. Relief, pride. For the first time since she'd arrived, I hadn't folded. I hadn't softened my words to keep the peace. I stood there in the quiet kitchen, heart pounding, realizing something important. I wasn't 9 anymore, and I didn't have to stay silent to belong. Dinner became a performance. Same table, same chairs. Same clock ticking too loudly on the wall. The only difference was the way Amanda held her fork, delicate, deliberate, like every movement was meant to be noticed. I just think, she said one night, pushing roasted carrots around her plate, some people don't understand how hard it is to be in love. Mom nodded immediately. Wedding planning is exhausting, sweetheart. I smiled and took a sip of water. Amanda glanced at me. Especially when you're doing it without your fiancé around. Long distance is. Lonely? That must be hard, I said neutrally. She exhaled a soft, tragic sound. It is, but love is sacrifice. Dad cleared his throat. Well, Julia's always been independent, she doesn't really need anyone hovering. There it was, casual, clean, dismissive. I don't hover, I said lightly. I schedule, Amanda laughed. Exactly. Fork scraped. Silence followed. Another night, another comment. Ethan likes his shirts folded a certain way, Amanda mentioned, eyeing the laundry basket near the door. I noticed they weren't. They're clean, I replied. Yes, but love is in the details. Mom reached over and squeezed Amanda's hand. You're doing so much, honey, I kept eating. After dinner, I went upstairs, closed my door, and opened a small leather notebook I'd bought years ago but never used. On the first page, I wrote the date. Then I wrote, comment about love. Tone, condescending. Parents agreed. The next night, implied I don't understand relationships. Dad backed her up. I didn't write how it made me feel. I wrote what happened. Clean facts, exact words, times, witnesses. Downstairs I could hear laughter. Amanda showing Mom wedding photos. Dad asking if she needed help printing seating charts. I walked past once and Mom said, "Oh, we picked up these candles for you, Amanda. Lavender helps with stress." For me, Amanda smiled. Thank you. No one looked at me. Later that week, Mom knocked on my door. Julia, can you move your shoes from the entryway? Amanda tripped. They've always been there, I said. Well, she replied gently, this is a sensitive time, I nodded. After she left, I wrote it down. Saturday dinner was quieter. Amanda barely spoke to me at all, which somehow felt worse. When she did, it was surgical. You know, she said, not looking up, Ethan worries about conflict. He hates tension. I do too, I replied. She smiled thinly. Then we're aligned. Dad looked between us. Let's all just keep the peace. I looked at my plate and wondered when peace had started to mean silence. That night I added another line to the notebook. Then another, then another. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was alert. Patterns were forming. Not just Amanda's behavior, but my parents. The way they leaned toward her. The way their voices softened when they spoke to her. The way I became background noise in my own home. One evening, Mom brought Amanda a small gift bag. Just something to lift your spirits. Amanda hugged her. You're so kind. I stood in the doorway unnoticed. Upstairs I wrote gifts, sympathy, exclusion. I closed the notebook and sat back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't plotting a confrontation. I was documenting reality. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't going to stay small. And when the moment came, when someone tried to rewrite the story, I wanted proof of every word they'd used to erase me. The waiting room smelled like bergamot and new carpet. I sat on the edge of a navy armchair, legs crossed too tightly, clutching a reusable water bottle like it might explain why I was really there. The receptionist smiled at me like she already knew. Dr. Langley will be with you in a few minutes. I nodded. This was my first therapy session in over a decade. The last time had been in college, after Dad told me I was being too emotional for crying when he forgot to attend my graduation. I remember the therapist's office had felt sterile and scripted. I never went back, but this time felt different. I was different. Julia, a voice called gently. Dr. Langley stood in the doorway, warm-eyed and calm. No clipboard, just a coffee mug that said still becoming. Her office was small, sunlit, and scattered with quiet details. A wool blanket folded across the arm of the couch, a bowl of smooth river stones, a tiny, thriving succulent on the windowsill. I sat down, still tense. I don't know where to start, I admitted. You're already starting, she said, so I talked. I told her about Amanda, about the comments, the cold smiles, the vanishing space in the home I'd lived in since returning to help my aging parents. I told her about the wine-sweet dinners that turned bitter, the quiet that came after being shut out of conversations, and I told her about my notebook. I'm writing everything down, I said, feeling vaguely embarrassed. Not because I want to use it, I just need to know I'm not imagining it. She tilted her head slightly. You're not. That sentence, just 2 words, did something strange to my chest. It loosened something. She leaned forward. Julia, this isn't about Amanda's behavior. It's not even about your parents choosing sides. This is about your voice. You've been trained to whisper when they shout. I blinked. It's not peace if you have to disappear to achieve it, she added. That's not harmony, that's self-erasure. I didn't speak, I couldn't, my throat tightened. Not with sadness, but with recognition. I just want to keep things calm, I finally whispered. I don't want to start anything. But what if something's already started? Dr. Langley said softly, and the only way to stop it is to speak. We didn't fix everything that day, but she handed me a soft-bound journal at the end of our session. Write, she said. Not just what they say, write how it lands, what it brings up, what you don't say in the moment, that's where your real voice lives. So I wrote. I wrote at night, curled up in bed with a dull ache in my chest. I wrote when Amanda offered my mother tea but didn't pour me any. I wrote when Mom bragged about Amanda's event styling to her bridge friends and said nothing about my latest project launch in Houston. I wrote when I couldn't cry because it felt like I didn't have permission. Dr. Langley called it naming the ghost. Every session, I came in a little straighter. My voice grew louder, not in volume, just in certainty. I wasn't trying to win a fight. I was trying to remember I had a right to stand in the room. Some days I still wondered if I was making too much of it, if I was the problem, the instigator, the unyielding older sister. But then I'd hear Amanda say something like, "You probably don't understand this, but Ethan needs someone soft," and I'd feel the journal already opening itself in my mind. Not to retaliate, to record, to hold on to myself, because I was starting to realize something else too. The more I named the ghost, the less I felt haunted. It was just after midnight when I sent the message. I was curled up in my room, the journal open beside me, the screen of my phone glowing against the dark. My thumbs hovered for too long before typing, then deleting, then typing again. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I just wanted Ethan to hear it from me, not through Amanda, not through silence. So I started from the beginning. Ethan, I didn't want to bring this up while you were away, but I'm struggling. Amanda's made it really hard to feel like this is still my home. She's taken over the space, belittles me constantly, and makes snide remarks in front of Mom and Dad. I've stayed quiet for the sake of peace, but it's hurting. She tried to take my car without asking, replaced half the things in the living room, and told me I don't understand love. I don't know if she's trying to push me out or if this is just her way of nesting, but it doesn't feel like a temporary visit anymore. I love you, I want to support your marriage, but I can't keep being erased in my own home. I need you to hear me, please. I stared at the message for a full minute before hitting send, then I waited and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Eventually the screen blinked, read, and finally his reply came. Let's talk when I'm back. That was it. No acknowledgement, no apology, not even a single word of comfort. I stared at the message like it might rearrange itself into something better. It didn't. The next morning, Amanda was humming in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and sipping from a mug that said bride mode. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. 2 days passed, then 3, no follow-up from Ethan. And Amanda, she noticed. Her eyes lingered longer when I entered the room. Her tone grew silkier, but her words sharper. Every smile had corners now. Sunday dinner came. Mom made her usual pot roast, Dad poured Amanda a glass of wine, and I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate. Then Amanda set down her fork with a clink and leaned forward slightly. I just want to say something, she said, brushing her hair back like she was on a reality show. Everyone looked up. I know things have been tense, she began, glancing at me, but I really thought we could all make this work. That we could be one big happy family. I kept my face neutral. But lately, she continued, I've started to feel like someone doesn't want this wedding to happen. Silence. Mom blinked. Dad shifted in his seat. Amanda tilted her head at me. Julia, is there something you want to say? I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said evenly. I've kept to myself. I haven't spoken badly about you to anyone. Amanda gave a small, pitying smile. Then maybe it's just unspoken energy, tension, but I feel it. I think you're misreading it. No, she said, I think you're used to being the only woman in your brother's life who matters, and now you're not. I looked at Mom. She was sipping her wine. Dad was staring at the roast. I looked back at Amanda. That's not true, I said softly. She shrugged. It's okay, not everyone knows how to share. I stood up quietly, picked up my plate. I think I'm done for tonight. No one stopped me. Upstairs, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I packed just one bag, essentials, jeans, 2 shirts, a notebook, my laptop, toothbrush. I didn't have a destination in mind, but something in my body needed to know I could leave, that I wasn't trapped in this twisted civility. I left the bag by the closet, closed the door, sat on the edge of my bed and breathed. The message had been read. The silence had spoken. And Amanda's words had drawn a new line in the sand. I wasn't crossing it. But I also wasn't stepping back anymore. Dinner smelled like rosemary chicken and final chances. I had hoped that maybe things would cool off, that maybe Ethan had said something from overseas to make Amanda ease up. But when I walked into the dining room, I knew better. Amanda was already seated, swirling her wine like a bored queen. My mother was laughing too loudly at something she said. Dad looked like he had been summoned, not invited. There was a seat left for me. Barely. Wedged at the corner like an afterthought, I sat, quietly. The first 10 minutes passed in stiff small talk. Amanda gushed about new silk napkins she'd ordered for the wedding and something about gold-dipped eucalyptus. Mom cooed, Dad nodded. No one asked how my week had been. Then Amanda set her glass down hard, just enough to draw attention. I think we should talk about the wedding, she said, voice light but loaded. I felt my stomach tight. Dad looked up. Everything okay? Amanda gave a soft, theatrical sigh. Not really. She turned to me. I've tried, she said. Truly, I've tried to include you, to be civil, but this dynamic between us, it's not healthy. I set my fork down, staying still. What are you saying? I'm saying, she replied, eyes fixed on mine, you shouldn't come to the wedding. The air dropped 10 degrees. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. None came. You're uninviting me? I asked. Amanda didn't flinch. I'm protecting my peace. And honestly, if you show up, I will ask the staff to remove you. I looked at my parents. Surely, someone would say something. Mom leaned forward, voice too soft to feel real. Sweetheart, maybe it's for the best. This day is about Amanda and Ethan. Right, Dad added. No drama, it's a celebration. I blinked. So you agree with her? Amanda folded her hands serenely. It's not personal, I laughed. It came out wrong, thin and cracked. Not personal, I repeated. Banning me from my own brother's wedding. You've made it tense, Amanda said. You've turned everything into a competition. My voice rose just slightly. You moved into my house. You tried to take my car. You've undermined me at every turn. I've done nothing but try to fit in with your family, she snapped, the mask slipping. But from the second I got here, you acted like I didn't belong. And maybe, she added, her voice hardening, that's because you never really learned how to share love. That's when Mom placed a hand over Amanda's and said, we think of her like a real daughter now. It hit me in the ribs. Like, not as in suddenly I knew what they saw when they looked at her, composed, graceful, soft-spoken, and what they saw when they looked at me, difficult, direct, uncomfortable. I'm your daughter, I said quietly. Not like I am, Dad shifted. You're making this bigger than it is. No, I said. You all are just finally saying it out loud. Amanda smiled slightly. I'm sorry it had to come to this. I stood up, my legs were shaking. I hope your photographer captures every perfect moment, I said, because you're going to want to remember who you chose. No one followed me as I walked upstairs. No one knocked on my door. I sat on the edge of my bed in the same clothes for hours, staring at the wall. Then, without meaning to, I started crying. Not the small, cinematic tears that trail prettily down your cheeks. The kind that make your shoulders shake. The kind you haven't allowed yourself in years because you thought crying made you weak. But it didn't feel weak. It felt like a dam breaking after years of holding in water that wasn't even mine. I cried for the girl who got blamed for the lamp. I cried for the sister who paid the deposit and still got asked to stay away. I cried because I finally understood. They didn't want me quiet. They wanted me gone. And now, they had Amanda to replace me with. The door creaked open at 3:12 p.m. on a Thursday. I know because I was already downstairs, pacing, holding a mug I'd reheated twice and never sipped. When Ethan stepped inside, he looked older, or maybe just weathered. His skin was wind-chapped and sunburnt, his hair messier than usual. He dropped his duffel bag by the door and looked up at me with tired eyes. Hey, Jules, my chest tightened. Hey, I said. We stood there for a second too long. Then I moved aside and he came in, glancing around like something might be different. He didn't ask where Amanda was. He didn't smile like he used to. We sat in the den, No candles, no music, just the soft tick of the clock and the hush of everything we hadn't said. I didn't plan to unload it all, I really didn't, but the moment he looked at me, really looked, I couldn't hold it back. She told me not to come to the wedding. Ethan blinked. What? Out loud, in front of Mom and Dad. Said she'd have me kicked out if I showed up. His face didn't change much, just a slow, subtle shift in the corners of his mouth, like something he was chewing on turned bitter. I went on, quiet, steady. She's been treating me like furniture for weeks. Cold, condescending, I tried to keep the peace. I tried everything, but she's been twisting things, turning them against me, and now they've decided she's the daughter they actually want. Ethan sat forward, elbows on his knees. Why didn't you call me? I did, I said. I texted you, you said, let's talk when I'm back. He exhaled slow. I saw it during a layover, I didn't think it was that bad. It is. I watched him closely, waiting for outrage, for a dramatic declaration, for some kind of brotherly defense, but Ethan just nodded, slow and distant. Okay, he said. That's it, I asked. Okay, he looked at me then, really looked. I'll take care of it. I almost didn't believe him. But something in his voice, low, serious, stripped of theatrics, landed differently. Ethan, I'm not asking you to end anything, I said. I just needed someone to finally see it. He stood, rubbed his face with both hands and walked to the window. You know, when we were kids, he said, I used to think you were invincible, like nothing got to you. Even when they blamed you for stuff, you never cried in front of them, you just took it. I thought that's what strength looked like, I murmured. It is, he said, but it also looks like finally saying enough. That night I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed on the counter. Family group chat, Ethan, wedding cancelled. Please respect our privacy. I froze, one sentence, 12 words, a digital earthquake. Within seconds the messages started rolling in. Mom, what do you mean cancelled? Dad, Ethan, call us now. Aunt Carla, are you okay? Cousin Brad, dude, is this a joke? My heart pounded. I stared at the screen as the notification bubbles lit up like fireworks. I didn't reply. I didn't even breathe. Instead, I sat down slowly on the couch. Still warm from the drier heat, still wrapped in the numbness of disbelief. Somewhere upstairs, Ethan's door clicked shut. Somewhere in town, Amanda was reading the same message. And somewhere deep inside me, a strange stillness settled. I hadn't expected him to do it, but he had. Not because I asked, because he finally saw. The knock came just after 8. Not the polite, tentative kind. The kind that makes your heart leap before you even know why. I was still in my robe, hair half-dried, when I opened the door and there they were, Ethan and Amanda. She looked like she'd slept in her makeup. Mascara smeared beneath both eyes, lips bare, expression cracked wide open. Her hand hovered just inches from his arm, like she didn't know if she was still allowed to touch him. Ethan's jaw was tight, but his eyes were unreadable. Controlled. Like a dam holding back something dangerous. Can we come in? He asked softly. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed no, but I stepped aside anyway. We didn't go far, just stood in the front entry, the three of us in a triangle of awkward silence. Amanda took one long breath, then another. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. I didn't come here to defend myself, she said. I came to tell you the truth. I folded my arms. Then start there, she swallowed. I was scared. I said nothing. I know that's not an excuse, but the closer the wedding got, the more I felt like I was losing him. Her voice cracked. And I thought if you were out of the picture, he'd fully be mine. I blinked. You mean if I disappeared, he'd love you more? No, she started, then stopped. Yes, maybe, I don't know, I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to manipulate my parents, to corner me at dinner, to uninvite me from a wedding I helped pay for. Amanda looked down. I know, you humiliated me in my own home. I know, I turned to Ethan. And you brought her here because... She wanted to apologize, he said quietly. And I told her nothing moves forward unless you accept it. My heart thudded in my chest. Amanda stepped forward, slowly. She pulled something from her purse, a folded piece of stationery. She held it out to me like an offering. A letter, she said. I wrote it last night. I didn't want to forget anything. I didn't take it. She placed it gently on the console table instead. Then she met my eyes again. I was wrong, Julia, not just for what I said, but for trying to erase you to feel more secure in my place. I see that now and I'm sorry. The room felt like it was holding its breath. For a moment I felt nothing. No rage, no triumph, just a strange, hollow ache. Why now? I asked. Why not weeks ago, or when I tried to explain, or when I asked for basic respect? She wiped at her face with the edge of her sleeve. Because until he canceled the wedding, I didn't think you mattered enough to stop everything. And just like that, I understood everything. She hadn't hated me, she'd feared me, feared the bond I had with Ethan, feared the part of him she couldn't touch, feared being second to someone who had never asked for the pedestal. I looked at my brother. Are you still marrying her? I don't know yet, he said honestly. That depends on you. The room fell quiet again. Amanda stood trembling in the soft morning light, no longer polished or perfect, just exposed. Human, uncertain, and me, I wasn't ready to forgive. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel invisible. They were waiting on me, and for once I had nothing to prove. The dining room looked deceptively ordinary. Same overhead light, same polished oak table. But that night, everything was different. Every chair was filled, Dad at the head, Mom beside him, Amanda across from me, Ethan at the far end like a referee to a silent war. The air was tight with expectation, the kind that presses on your lungs even before a word is said. No one reached for the breadbasket. No one made small talk. I sat upright, palms flat against my thighs, watching my family try to pretend that chicken parmesan would fix this. Then Ethan cleared his throat. Everyone looked up. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't fumble or stammer, he just spoke and the room listened. I canceled the wedding, he began, because I couldn't marry someone who thought it was okay to erase the person who means the most to me. Mom winced. Dad exhaled through his nose. Amanda sat still, her lips pressed together. Ethan looked directly at our parents. And I couldn't keep pretending that silence wasn't the same as choosing sides. Dad shifted in his seat. Ethan, no, Ethan said. Just let me finish. A beat passed. If you love me, he said, his voice cracking slightly, you love my sister, period. There's no version of my future where she isn't in it, so if anyone at this table has a problem with that, tell me now. Silence. Then Mom looked at her plate and mumbled, we didn't know how bad it got. You didn't want to know, I said quietly. Dad gave a long sigh. We thought it was just a personality clash. I looked at them both. You thought it was easier to believe I was difficult than to believe someone else was cruel. They didn't respond. Amanda reached slowly into her purse and pulled out the same folded letter she'd tried to hand me before. She slid it across the table toward me. I meant what I said, she whispered. It's all in there, every ugly piece of it. I was scared, and I turned that fear into control. I'm sorry. Her eyes glistened. Her shoulders trembled. It was the first time I'd ever seen her stripped of performance. She stood suddenly, walked around the table, stopped beside me. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, but I couldn't move forward without trying to make it right. Then slowly she leaned down and hugged me, not the quick, polite kind, the kind where a person's whole body shakes against yours. I sat frozen for a moment. Then I raised my arms, stiffly at first, and let them wrap around her. I didn't cry. But I could feel something thawing inside me, a slow warmth in the center of my chest. Not because I was being pressured, not because I wanted to make peace for anyone else, but because, for the first time, I was being seen. Amanda stepped back. Her face was blotchy, her mascara gone. She didn't try to fix it. Ethan's eyes met mine across the table. He gave the smallest nod, full of gratitude. Dad cleared his throat. We're sorry too, Julia. We should have been better. Mom added, we let things slide because we didn't want conflict. That was wrong. I nodded once. Not an absolution, not yet, just a signal that I heard them. We finished dinner slowly after that, in scattered bites and quiet conversation. No one forced anything. No one demanded smiles. And for once, it didn't feel like a performance. It felt like a beginning. The second wedding invitation arrived in a soft gray envelope, elegant and simple. No floral flourishes, no heavy script. Just clear, honest words. Amanda and Ethan, a new beginning. It was scheduled for early October. Cooler air, quieter hearts. A shorter guest list. No ornate banquet hall this time, just a converted vineyard an hour outside Austin, where the breeze didn't feel like pressure and the trees didn't judge you. This time I wasn't asked for money. I was asked to be part of it. Amanda came by a month before the date, binder in hand, nervous energy crackling under her smile. I was wondering, she said, flipping open a page, if you'd help me with the seating chart. I'm completely overthinking it, and Ethan says you're the only one who can make sense of my chaos. It wasn't a trick. She'd already written my name next to her cousins and opposite two guests I liked. She'd thought about it, carefully. We sat at the dining room table for hours that afternoon, not always speaking, sometimes laughing, And somewhere between, what if we put the singers near the dance floor? And do we really need a dessert table and cake? Something began to mend. She showed me a swatch of champagne-colored fabric. It's for your dress, she said. I want you up front with us, next to my sister. I blinked. You mean as part of the bridal party? Amanda gave a sheepish smile. You are my sister, aren't you? It didn't come with an apology this time, just an offering, a place. I didn't say yes right away, but I didn't say no either. On the day of the wedding, the vineyard buzzed with soft music and glasses clinking gently in the breeze. Sunlight filtered through oak branches, painting the aisle in golden light. Amanda looked beautiful, yes, but more than that, she looked grounded. Her dress was simple, her eyes steady. She didn't try to control the ceremony like a production. She let it be real. During the toasts, Ethan stood beside her, glass raised. I want to thank everyone who made today possible, he said, but especially the people who stood by us. Even when it wasn't easy, even when it wasn't fair. He looked at me. Love doesn't just mean weddings and rings. Sometimes it means standing your ground, calling out truth, and forgiving slowly but completely. He lifted his glass higher. To the people who never left, even when they had every reason to, people clapped. Amanda touched his hand gently. And I felt something lift from my chest that had been sitting there since July. Later, at the reception, as fairy lights blinked and music swelled, Amanda came up beside me. We weren't dancing, just swaying slightly near the dessert table, watching the guests laugh. She held out a glass of champagne. To you, she said. I didn't know I needed a sister until I almost lost one. I clinked my glass against hers. You didn't lose me. I just stopped letting myself be forgotten. Her eyes shimmered a little, but she nodded. Thank you for coming back. I never left, I said. I just got louder. We drank in silence. And for the rest of the evening I didn't hover. I didn't fade. I belonged. Not because they made space for me, but because I claimed it. The ballroom at the Austin Civic Center was packed, heels clicking on marble, glasses chiming, laughter rising beneath soft golden chandeliers. Banners read, "She stands. Empowerment starts at home." 5 years ago, I never would have believed I'd be standing next to Amanda beneath one of those banners, let alone as co-founders. She was adjusting her earpiece, hair swept into a sleek low bun, clipboard clutched tightly in one hand. Do we have a backup mic for the panel? She asked one of the interns. I triple-checked, I said. Amanda turned, eyes still sharp, but not with the old suspicion, just focus. You always triple-check, she said. Then with a half-smile, that's why I need you. The organization had started as an idea over brunch one spring, when Amanda mentioned how isolated she'd felt planning the wedding, how the pressure to be perfect nearly broke her. I'd added, yeah, and the pressure to stay silent nearly broke me. We'd looked at each other then, really looked, and something sparked. She Stands was born out of that moment. Out of all the things we didn't say for years, and the power that came when we finally did. We offered workshops for women navigating complex family roles, supported mothers returning to the workforce, created space for conversations that had no place in polite dinner chatter. And tonight was our second annual gala. Amanda took the mic first, welcoming donors, introducing speakers, thanking the women who'd built the platform beside us. Then she passed the mic to me, and I stood center stage, the warmth of the spotlight oddly comforting. I never thought a quiet girl from Central Texas would be standing here tonight, I began. But I also never thought I'd find my voice by nearly losing my family. People leaned in. We started She Stands because too many women are asked to make peace by disappearing, to keep families whole by shrinking themselves, to be supportive without ever being supported. I scanned the room. Well, that ends here. Applause broke out, rising like a wave. I smiled, heart full. Later, Ethan took the stage to close the evening. These two used to nearly kill each other over kitchen counters, he said, gesturing to me and Amanda, and now they run an empire together. Laughter filled the room. Amanda rolled her eyes in mock exasperation. I raised my glass toward Ethan and he grinned. But seriously, he continued, watching my sister and my wife grow into something unstoppable has been the greatest privilege of my life. They taught me that love isn't about always agreeing, it's about showing up, even after the hardest conversations, and staying. A slow hush followed, glasses lifted, hearts softened. Amanda stepped beside me after the program ended, her hand brushing mine. You think we'll ever tell our interns the full story? She whispered. Not unless we want them to quit, I smirked. We laughed. And beneath that laughter, something unshakable rested between us. Not just forgiveness, not even trust. But something better, mutual respect earned the long way around. I glanced at the banner above us again. She stands. Once that had been a prayer. Now it was a promise. Because I'd learned something all those years ago, sitting at that dinner table with a pit in my chest. When you stand for your dignity, even when you stand alone, something in the world starts shifting. And sometimes the people who once tried to silence you end up amplifying your voice.